Well then, it looks like we somehow made our way to the final zone of not only for the entire Sonic the Hedgehog 4 saga, but it's also the final zone in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, which appears to be Hedgehog Mark II. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am back for the likes of the mk.II videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 4, specifically Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2 for the Xbox 360 / PlayStation 3 / PC and finally iOS smartphones, but not on the Wii because, you know, graphical limitations. So, anyways, last time we've essentially did manage to traverse into not only Oil Desert Zone, but it's also at the Bombs of Sky Fortress Zone. And on top of that, we also did manage to claim ourselves the 7th and the final Chaos Emerald specifically in Act 1 in Oil Desert Zone. And aside from all that stuff though, then again, much like in Episode 1, Super Sonic is actually pretty fun to use, despite the fact that we somehow get interrupted by the bombs attack actions, which that's how the game always requires us to be able to perform certain techniques with Tails and stuff like that. So, I digress. So today for this video, this is going to be the true finale of not only with Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, but it's also the entire Sonic the Hedgehog 4 as a whole. Because relatively speaking now, as you can tell, as I mentioned this earlier, we're now going to be traversing into Hedgehog Mark II, which appears to be, kind of thinking about it, this particular Hedgehog usually does manage to contain Little Planet inside of it from Sonic CD. So basically, unlike the forms of how it does it on X Station Zone, there's only one specific act, which appears to be a boss rush kind of level. Well, in Episode 2, for specifically Hedgehog Mark II, it now contains 2 levels this time. So basically in Act 1, as you can tell, basically though, we are technically fighting against with not only with Dr. Eggman, but as well as Metal Sonic as well. And that's how the co-op teamwork aspect decides to come into play, not able to deal with the amount of damage to Metal Sonic, despite the fact that sometimes though, I felt a little bit quite tricky at times when it comes to trying to able to actually speed things up a notch, because obviously though Eggman decides to able to protect Metal Sonic at one point, but as soon as you're able to deal enough damage to Metal Sonic, if you think this entire stage is done, well, as a result, we're still not done with this just yet, because obviously though, much like the forms of how it does it in certain Sonic games when it comes to anti-gravity segments, like for instance, if we hop into this spring, the gravity just somehow keeps on shifting, much like the forms of how it does it on other Sonic games in the past, ranging from the Death Egg Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, alongside with the forms of, I would say, Cosmic Angel Zone from Sonic Advance, alongside with the forms of Egg Utopia Zone from Sonic Advance 2, and much more really. Oh, alongside with the forms of maybe Deadline from Sonic Rush. But despite the fact that, as I stated before, Sonic the Hedgehog 4, not only for Episode 1, but as well as Episode 2, really loves able to actually keep on placing not only certain springs, but as well as speed boosters as well. So generally speaking, that's as far as I can try to describe about it. And yeah, nothing else I can really say about it, I guess. I mean, I still like the team-up mechanic, especially concerning for the fact that it does have certain strategic moments when it comes to likely for certain situations, like for instance though with the forms of in White Park Zone, that we have to able to actually go through snow with the rolling combo and stuff like that, and also say applies with the forms if you don't want to get into the actual bottomless pit and stuff like that, well you can essentially try use the flying combo with Tails, so that way you can able to make yourself safer. So, but obviously the biggest problem I have with the team up mechanic is that there's no way to switch between characters as the lead. Like you always seem able to actually take control of Sonic. So because of that though, because what I found was a little bit baffling to me though, is that you can't able to actually take control of Tails all by himself, so you have to able to specifically try to play as Sonic the whole way through. I mean, that's a little bit of a missed opportunity, don't you think? Unless if you're trying to able to actually play the game in co-op mode, either in local play or online play, but that's besides the point. So, And I get the feeling about the fact that we now on to the final bit of Act 1. And, oh, this looks familiar, doesn't it? It may look like that Metal Sonic wants to have a race against us. So, yeah, this looks very familiar, doesn't it? Which appears to be a, sort of a homage to the films of Sonic CD, specifically Stardust Speedway, except this particular race is a total cakewalk, unless if you try to use the rolling combo technique. And relatively speaking, though, it's incredibly broken if you manage to use that technique. But regardless of everything else though, yeah, if you manage to win, well, Metal Sonic is down for good. So yeah, all it needs left now is to try to take down Dr. Eggman. That'll be about it for episode 2, alongside with the entire Sonic the Hedgehog 4 as a result. So generally speaking now, and we get ourselves our next extra life, so that's also pretty swell. So, after a couple of deaths and journey forms have been Sky Fortress Zone Act 3 most likely. But anyway, let's get on to the forms of the final level in the entire episode 2, alongside with the forms of the entire saga of Sonic 4. That's what appears to be the boss fight in the forms of Hedgehog Mark 2. So I'm really hoping that this particular boss fight does not rehash the Hedgehog robot again. So I'm really hoping it will be something a little bit more original about it. So let's see what we have in store for us. Oh, okay, this is different, especially considering it's almost like a heart. So, relatively speaking though, yeah, we're about to take down Eggman once and for all, I guess. So, either way though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, here is the 26th of October today, in some cases in 2024 today. And as you probably already know, ever since in yesterday, about the fact that Maxi has technically already mentioned about that, ever since in Journey Falls have been the final boss part for the likes of Luigi's Mansion 2, obviously though is about the fact that it's kind of unfortunate with our particular special video coming up in regards to the forms of Sonic X Shadow Generations. Well, apparently though about the fact that it's about to be delayed. Probably specifically until tomorrow in some cases though, plus it's mainly because no matter what though, it's about the fact that we just want to get these games done before we move over to the last batch of those Let's Plays in 2024, before we move on to, you know, 2025. So either way though, now, I digress. So there's also another thing worth mentioning for actually, is about the fact that recently, ever since about a couple of days ago, did you know about the fact that the Walt Disney Animation Studios company, specifically Disney, has now officially turned into 101 years old. So yeah, ever since Journey Falls have been last year, they somehow managed able to celebrate the 100 years anniversary celebration for the Disney company. Like, Journey Falls have been last year, they somehow managed to celebrate it with the films of the release of Once Upon a Studio, which I still think is actually the best thing that's ever about it, especially considering for the fact that, well, truth be told though, because I usually always adore a lot of throwbacks to the classic Disney movies, from Golden Age to Silver Age to Bronze Age, or even the best era of Disney films, which is of course the Renaissance era, and you probably get the gist of it. So again, I do apologize for that tongue twist in the end, folks, but that's just mainly because, as you can tell, basically though, this fight is a little bit tricky at times, but I will give this game some credit for, as I said this before, is about the fact I'll give the developers credit, able to design something a little bit more original for a final boss, instead of just like shamelessly rehashing the forms of the exact same boss fight. Ever since Journey Forms have been episode 1, they managed able to bring back the Hedgehog robot after all. I mean, my only problem with this boss fight to me though is the lack of spectacle. Like, I just wish there was actually more to it. Although every once in a while though is about the fact that this particular boss's name was actually called the Egg Heart, or the Hedgehog Heart. Basically though, he decided able to create a shield, that's how the rolling combo decides to come into play. Now, if you ever played the Xbox 360 version of this game, or nowadays with the Xbox One version mind you, there was actually a special reward you do get if you managed able to beat the boss fights without taking a single hit. And relatively speaking though, the only reward you do get, that's what appears to be one of your avatar clothing. So as a result though, I'm pretty sure it's the Dr. Eggman one, which I'm presuming that's what that is. Although, kind of thinking about it though, one thing I totally forgot to mention about this back in Journey Forms have been the finale part of episode 1, that if you collect all the rings in the ending sequence and you turn into Super Sonic, you're able to actually get one of those avatar clothings as well. But regardless of such though, it's basically the Sonic's costume, so there's nothing else I can really say about it. So there we go, folks. The Death Egg heart has been completely demolished, and as a result though, that pretty much does it for Death Egg Mark II, and on top of that, that pretty much concludes Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2. So I'm very curious to know of how the ending is actually going to play out to be, but I'm sure we'll find out until now. So you're probably thinking the day is saved, right? Well, here's the thing, because it was originally gonna have the episode 3, but unfortunately though, is about the fact that, well, usually for the sake of the films of Sonic the Hedgehog 4 as a result, that basically though, they were originally able to be planning to do episode 3, but due to the forms of poor sales and also poor receptions, the forms of both not only with episode 1, but as well as episode 2, did somehow cancel the rest of the planned series. So yeah, Little Planet being trapped in the Death Egg is the final ending, Get Screwed Up Little Planet. So yeah, relatively speaking though, yeah, it seems kind of redundant, doesn't it? Especially concerning for the fact that it doesn't help about the fact that if you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, there is no alternate ending. So generally speaking though, this seems entirely pointless able to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds. So relatively speaking though, that pretty much summed up as the forms of the entire Sonic the Hedgehog 4 as a result. It's not that great. Although, I will say, I honestly do slightly enjoy episode 2, but usually compared to the forms of how it does it in not only for episode 1, but as well as episode Metal, I would say episode 1, it just doesn't do anything for me anymore after the events, especially now we've actually got ourselves not only Sonic Mania, but as well as Sonic Superstars as well. Although, despite the fact that Sonic Superstars does have some sheer amount of issues, which we'll get to that at some point until next year, alongside with our redo Let's Play of Sonic Mania at some point, with plus expansion to it, but I digress. So, anyways, what's my final thoughts of Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2? I think it's alright. I mean, it's just about the fact that, like I stated before, it's about the fact that the physics is not perfect, but I will say the physics has been slightly bit more better than Episode 1 to me, though. And also, certain zones are still basically rehashed from the certain zones from the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, apart from White Park Zone. And on top of all that stuff, though, I do think that the graphics do look a bit nicer, especially concerning this is now on 2.5D. And on top of all that stuff, though, it makes things a little bit more breathtaking to see during the forms of certain backgrounds and all that stuff. But regardless of everything else though, the soundtrack is just, not that great in my opinion. Although the controls wise are pretty much exactly identical to episode 1, alongside with episode Metal. But I will say I do like the forms of the team up mechanic, and I would like to see that particular feature returned in the future Sonic games for who knows, maybe with the forms of Sonic Heroes remake or something, or Sonic Heroes 2 or anything else like that. I don't know, we shall see what happens until in 2025. So yeah, that pretty much does it for the entire, not only for episode 2 of Sonic the Hedgehog 4, but also the entire Sonic the Hedgehog 4 as a result. And I'm gladly to say, I can finally get a chance to experience Sonic X Shadow Generations for reals. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching of our Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 4 episode 2. This is me, Sonic the Hedgehog, from the likes of the mk.II. And until then, I will see you guys until in the next Let's Play. Later fellas, bye.